Mr. Chairman, I rise in support of my amendment, which would exempt rules proposed by the Nuclear Regulatory Commission from the new impediments to the regulations in this bill. Mr. Chairman, there they go again. The right-wing Republican House majority is practicing more voodoo economics. This time it's the belief that over-regulation is the cause of our slow economic growth and high unemployment rate. There is no evidence to support this position. None. In actuality, according to the Economic Policy Institute, economy-wide studies do not find a significant decline in employment from regulatory policies. And some regulations actually create jobs due to regulatory compliance. More broadly, findings from the Office of Management and Budget in both Republican and Democratic administrations show the benefits of regulations far outweigh their costs. Most recently, OMB found that the benefits from major rules issued between 2001 and 2010 yielded benefits ranging from $136 billion to $651 billion, and imposed costs of between $44 and $62 billion. Despite these facts, the right-wing Republican House leadership presses ahead with what it calls regulatory reform. Today's bill, in the name of so-called reform, adds over 60 new procedural and analytical hoops agencies and departments must jump through before a regulation can be issued. The result is to impede, obstruct, and delay the attempt of government to accomplish one of its most basic functions, protecting the health and welfare of our people. Not surprisingly, groups who care about protecting public safety, health, and the environment, such as the Natural Resource Defense Council, Public Citizen, Defenders of Wildlife, U.S. PIRG, oppose this bill. According to the Coalition for Sensible Safeguards, which represents a coalition of many such groups, this bill will grind to a halt the rulemaking process and is nothing less than an attempt to roll back our critical public safeguards and promote industry interests ahead of protecting the health and lives of American citizens. Americans should rightfully be scared that this bill will put their health and safety at risk. One example that highlights this fact is the subject of this amendment: nuclear power. The risks and danger of nuclear power were made all the more clear this year. In Japan, we all watched in horror when that country was devastated by a meltdown of the Fukushima nuclear power plant. And we are now told that over 10% of the land of that country will be unusable for decades. Later, Virginia was struck by a relatively rare but strong earthquake felt up and down the eastern seaboard. It caused a nuclear power plant near the epicenter to have to go offline. Because of the catastrophes that can result from disasters, be they natural or man-made, at nuclear power plants, prevention of meltdowns is the key. That's why I'm a co-sponsor of H.R. 1242, the Nuclear Power Plant Safety Act of 2011, sponsored by Representative Markey, which is designed to help do that. Among other changes, it would require the NRC to impose rules requiring plants to upgrade to withstand severe events like earthquakes and to have enough backup power so as to avoid a meltdown for a significant event of length of time. The NRC must have the ability and flexibility to impose new regulations quickly to safeguard the health and well-being of Americans. Impeding the Nuclear Regulatory Agency's ability to regulate will not save one job, but might cost millions of lives in the event of a disaster. Sadly, this bill makes the ability to regulate nuclear power plants all but impossible. And for me, this concern hits close to home. A nuclear power plant at Indian Point, about which many people, including myself, have had concerns for years, lies less than 40 miles away from the center of New York City in my district. There are 20 million people living within a 50-mile radius around the plant, the same radius used by the NRC as the basis for the evacuation zone recommended after the Fukushima disaster. Indian Point sits near two earthquake fault lines, and according to the NRC, is the most likely nuclear power plant in the country to experience more damage due to an earthquake. To keep my constituents, and indeed all Americans, safe, I'm offering this amendment today. It would exempt the Nuclear Regulatory Commission from the onerous new requirements for rulemaking imposed by this bill. With this amendment, the NRC would have the ability to safeguard public health and safety as it should. And we must pass this amendment so that rulemaking for nuclear disasters is not impeded. And I urge the passage of this amendment, and I reserve the balance of my time.